as the ANC edges closer to 2022, that's the elective conference, the question is, will Cyril Ramaphosa be elected for a second term? And who could be potentially the face that he is going to contest for that position in the ANC? Wits University political analyst Susan Booysen joins us now to chat about this a little bit further. Susan, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight here on In Focus. Now, of course, that conversation is already underway. We are in 2021. 2022 is just around the corner. What are the political coordinates that will give us telltale signs of who possibly could emerge victorious in this race?
Yes, indeed. These very important ANC National Elective Conference elections do not just fall out of blue sky. They come by certain constituencies, certain blocks. There were certain roughly predetermined numbers of delegates, voting delegates, per each of these blocks that come in and vote at these conferences. Of course, in the first place, and there's so much fluidity that is still possible there, is the branch numbers, and they are funneled via the provinces. And membership numbers determine how many delegates there will be per province. There's roughly a number, 4,500, maybe it's a rough benchmark that we have there from across the provinces. But those are only about 92% of the overall number of total voting delegates at these conferences. Others come from the NEC, from the provincial executive committees, a good 240, 250 come from across the 9 provinces, those structures. And then about 60, at least that was the number at the 2017 elective conferences, comes from each of the leagues, of the veterans, the women's, and the youth. And so we know these ones are predetermined, roughly predetermined figures. If they vary, they will vary minimally. And it will, at the end of the day, be the provinces and the branches funneled through the provinces that will be over 90% of those voting delegates. And there, the membership figures of the ANC are still so much in flux. We know, we've heard, that has gone up to 1.5 million roughly there. At the time of the NASREC 2017 conference, there was around 990,000 members, but this 1.5 million is still it's a very big dark horse, if I may call it that, in this election, because those numbers have been verified. They have really jumped up in the time of Ace Magashule as Secretary General, and the ANC using a electronic voting electronic membership member registration system. And so this figure has to be verified, and how that is distributed proportionately between the provinces is probably the biggest power broker in this election, these elections of the ANC.
As much as we know that President Cyril Ramaphosa controls the operations of state, how much power and influence does he have in that membership?
You know, that is really so much in flux. But the one thing that we know for certain is he does have more power now than he had at the time when he assumed power, 2017, 2018, and soon thereafter. Because we know his position in the NEC has been consolidated to the extent that many people say only about 20 out of the 80 plus members of the NEC are now vocal supporters of the anti-Ramaphosa camp, and that is a significant shift, although that is a small proportion of the overall number of voting delegates at these elective conferences. And we do know, we have seen the leagues, the youth, women, and veterans, all three of these very important leagues, who can be carriers of potential alternative candidates into these elections. All three of these leagues are currently being deconstructed and potentially reconstructed. It's either interim processes, transformational processes that will bring transitions in these leagues. Those are in place, they are unfolding. And we know for certain that previously those leagues were very much anti-Ramaphosa, but they, in many respects, had been hijacked by the Zuma forces, and then Magashule, if one can talk about forces on his side. And that situation is changing because they do have high moral voices in the ANC, and they can be alternative sites for nomination of candidates, especially into the top 6 slates.
Yeah. Now, we do see a number of structures within the ANC currently having interim management. Maybe even if we look at provinces like the Free State, provinces like the Northwest, where there are currently task teams that are managing those processes. How will that impact on the outcomes of 2022 and the political direction that things will go?
It definitely has a significant influence. Those provinces, previously they were the Patriotic Alliance forces that were really mobilizing very strongly anti-Ramaphosa in 2017, for example. Those 2 provinces, they're only 2 of 9 provinces, but they have significant voices because they've also come to epitomize the anti-Ramaphosa, and not just anti-Ramaphosa camp, anti-clean-up camp in the ANC. They've been epitomizing that. And defeat of the previous leadership structures, that means those of Magashule and Momapelo in the Northwest, defeat of those would be very important symbolical bridgeheads in the ANC, which show that that campaign has significantly been defeated. But then on the other hand, it's about high time that that campaign is being dealt with in some way, definitively, because we are getting so close to the new elections. And that is one thing that really remains very uncertain going ahead. And that is exactly how the provinces will be divided, and will be what the provincial membership numbers of the ANC will be, and to what extent that will generate creation of new power blocks. And it's important to note that those provinces that previously were so very much anti-Ramaphosa and pro-NDZ at that stage, their numbers have been going down in recent times. Very important, though, is KwaZulu-Natal. And not surprisingly, as in the past, but their membership numbers, have been rising more further, and to the extent that that province currently holds about 20% of ANC members, and that means 20% of that roughly 92% of voting delegates that will be coming from branches. At this stage, my current membership figures will be coming from KwaZulu-Natal, and that was very interesting. By all indications, although they've not been very explicit in it, Zweli Mkhize has been their great hope to bring KwaZulu-Natal ANC back into the top ANC, top 6 there, and potentially into a presidential candidacy. And we know that that is up in the air at this stage.
Now, the other question, of course, is we've seen a number of the collective decisions and actions being challenged. I mean, as we speak, I think it's this week where we're going to see the ANC against the ANC in court. That is the Secretary General challenging his step-aside decision. But also, there's been a collective decision and action taken to want to disband the MKMVA, and the MKMVA resisting that disbandment. What does that tell us around the unification of the party going forward, even getting into the next conference?
Yes, and that is why there is so much fluidity in those determinations of future conference outcomes and future leadership of the ANC, because contestation has not died away. We see it this week. Yes, Ace Magashule will be contesting in the High Court as to whether the ANC have the right to suspend him or whether he should have suspended the president. And so we'll see much of those. We've already seen arguments unfolding, and this week it will go to court. So that is being contested. By all indications, by my reading the ANC constitution in relation to the sort of the country, the national constitution, it does not seem as if Magashule has a huge chance to be successful there. When we get to the Veterans Leagues, the MKMVA and the National Council, those two are still in a big contest, especially MKMVA resisting the instruction that it be disbanded, whether the ANC and NEC and WC have the right to do that disbandment. So there is still much contestation there. But it's interesting, too, in the respect that MKMVA has been trying to be the voice, the mouthpiece of the so-called radical economic transformation, although I do not think it really existed there. It was a sub-ideology in ANC that came into being when people really were threatened with being delivered out to judicial processes and prosecutions in South Africa then. The RET faction, well, passenger style, remember those times with the Guptas and Zuma, that really took shape there. And so the potential disbandment and definitive merger with the National Council on the veteran side of the ANC contest, that is a very significant step and procedures there, and it could indicate that at least a piece of that specific leg of the campaign that had been run against Ramaphosa in the ANC.
Right, we appreciate your time tonight. That line there letting us down and deteriorating there towards the end. Political analyst and Wits University visiting an emeritus professor, Susan Booysen. They're giving us some analysis on the race towards 2022 elective conference in the ANC.